The espresso machine at Fernbrook had been making a screeching sound for weeks, and on the Tuesday it finally quit. They'd taped a handwritten sign to the door that just said, "Closed. Closed. Compressor. Sorry for the inconvenience," and left it at that. I stood on the sidewalk for a second, in the kind of cold that isn't quite winter yet but wants you to know it's coming, and thought about how disproportionately annoyed I was about coffee. It was late October in Toronto. The leaves on DuPont Street had gone that wet orange color they get right before they turn into mush, and I had a 9 o'clock call I hadn't prepped for. I needed caffeine the way other people need a plan. So I walked 6 extra minutes to a place called Birch and Ember, a narrow café wedged between a bike shop and a place that sold overpriced candles, which I'd passed probably 200 times without going in. Inside it smelled like toasted grain and cedar, and there was a line 8 people deep, which told me either the coffee was good or everyone else's machine had also broken that morning. I got in line behind a guy in a Blue Jays toque scrolling through his phone, and that's when I noticed her. 3 people ahead of me, dark coat, hair the color of wet maple leaves pulled back loosely, and she was standing with the particular stillness of someone who wasn't checking her phone, wasn't fidgeting, wasn't doing any of the things people do to look busy while they wait. She was just there, present, like waiting itself didn't bother her. Then she turned her head, not much, just enough, and looked directly at me. I want to say I held her gaze with some kind of composure, but the truth is I looked away first, the way you do when you get caught doing something you didn't mean to do. When I looked back, she hadn't looked away. She was still watching me with an expression I couldn't place. Not flirtatious exactly, more like she was reading a paragraph she'd already read once, and was checking it against her memory. The line moved. I heard her order at the counter, "Oat cortado, please," in a voice that was low and even, the kind of voice that never seems to need to repeat itself. She stepped to the side to wait for it, still hadn't paid, digging in her bag for her wallet, and I was next up. "Black coffee, medium," I told the barista. Then, before the part of my brain that makes sensible decisions could weigh in, I added, "And I've got hers too, the cortado." The barista glanced toward her, and she looked over at me with genuine surprise, wallet still half out of her bag. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I know, that's usually the point." Her mouth did something. Not quite a smile, more like the beginning of one that got interrupted by her deciding not to let it happen yet. I paid, and we both stood at the end of the counter, waiting for our drinks like 2 people who'd agreed to something without discussing terms. When her cup came up, I slid it toward her. "So, what's this?" she said. Not really a question. More like she was auditing me. "I don't actually know," I admitted. "You looked like someone who already knew how the morning was going to go, and I wanted in on it." She studied me for a second, the kind of look that makes you very aware of your own face. "That's a strange thing to say to a stranger." "I'm aware, and you said it anyway." I did. That got the smile the rest of the way out. Small, contained, gone almost as fast as it arrived, but real. "Thank you for the coffee," she said, and took it to a table by the window, opened a laptop, and became instantly absorbed in whatever was on the screen. Like the whole exchange had just been a pleasant piece of weather. I left with my coffee, feeling like I'd won something, and also like I'd just done something faintly ridiculous, and made it about half a block before I realized I'd left my laptop bag under the counter where I'd been standing. When I pushed back through the door, muttering at myself, she was still at the window table, and she looked up at me again. Not startled, not curious, just watching, like my coming back had already been factored into her morning somehow. I grabbed the bag, gave her an awkward nod because I didn't have anything smarter, and she lifted her cup an inch in acknowledgement. This should have been the whole story. That should have been the whole story. One coffee, one strange little exchange. A good excuse to feel slightly interesting for the rest of the day. Except the next morning. Even though Fernbrook had fixed its compressor and reopened, I walked past it and went to Birch and Ember instead. I told myself, the coffee was better there. It wasn't. Not enough to justify the extra 10 minutes it added to my commute down to the office near King and Bay. She wasn't there. I went again Thursday. Still nothing. By Friday I felt genuinely foolish, standing in line, ordering my black coffee, glancing at the empty window table, like I had some claim on it, hating how much the emptiness bothered me. I didn't even know her name. I knew her drink order and the fact that she looked at people like she'd already finished a first read of them. I almost didn't go back Saturday. The rain had started overnight. The cold, gray, sideways kind that Toronto specializes in from October through April. And I had zero good reasons to leave my apartment. Then I put my coat on anyway. She was there. Same table, same laptop open in front of her, a cortado steaming next to it, and this time she looked up the second the door chime rang, like she'd been half watching the entrance the whole morning. I ordered slower than necessary, trying to decide whether walking over would read as confident or unhinged, and by the time my coffee was ready I still hadn't landed on an answer, so I walked over anyway. "This is going to sensationalize a line," I said, stopping at her table. She looked up at me, unreadable. "Is it a good one?" "Statistically unlikely." "Then sit," she said, closing the laptop halfway. "Let's find out together." I sat. She leaned back in her chair with the kind of unhurried confidence that made me suddenly conscious of everything about myself. My hands, my coat, the fact that I was holding my coffee like it might run away. "You came back," she said. "The coffee's good." "It's fine coffee. You came back Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday too." I stopped with the cup halfway to my mouth. "How do you know that?" The smile came back small and deliberate. "I'll tell you later." She did not tell me later. That was the first real thing I learned about her. When she said later, she meant on a schedule only she could see. "Do I at least get a name?" I said. "Or is that also later?" She considered this like it required actual thought. "Naomi," she said finally. Naomi Calder. It fit her the way certain names just do. Not soft, not showy. Something that would look right printed in small type on a business card that didn't need to try hard. I told her mine and she repeated it once, quietly, like she was checking whether it matched something she already had in her head. "What do you do?" she asked. "When you're not stalking cafes." "Brand strategy. I help companies figure out what they're actually trying to say before they spend a lot of money saying it badly." That's a generous way to describe advertising. I try. "So what's the real version?" she said. "The one you'd give if you didn't care whether I was impressed." I laughed, because there wasn't a good way to dodge that. I told her the truer version, that half my job was talking executives out of ideas they were emotionally attached to, and that lately I'd started to wonder if I even believed in most of what I was selling. She listened in a way most people don't, without reaching for something to say back right away. "And you," I said. "What's the real version of what you do?" "I run a strategy consulting practice. Built it myself, no partners, no family money behind it." She said it the way you'd report the weather, but there was weight underneath it. The kind you only notice if you're paying attention. It took longer than I expected. I don't romanticize hard work anymore. It's just work. I found myself watching her a little differently after that. The table became a thing we both pretended was accidental. I'd show up around 7:45. She was almost always already there, laptop open, cortado cooling slightly while she typed. The first few mornings she kept working while I sat across from her. Then one Wednesday, without any announcement, she closed the laptop the moment I pulled out the chair. I noticed. She noticed me noticing. "Don't make that face," she said. "What face?" "The one where you think something means something." "It might," I said. "It means my inbox is less annoying today than usual. That's all." Deeply romantic. She almost smiled again. The mornings built slowly. No big declarations, no cinematic moments, Just coffee and short exchanges. And the kind of silence that stopped feeling awkward and started feeling like something you could actually rest in. She remembered things. A client pitch I'd been dreading. A campaign I thought was mediocre, but had to defend in a room full of people nodding along anyway. The fact that I couldn't stand cinnamon in coffee, but would eat an entire Nanaimo bar without blinking, which she called structurally inconsistent as a person. I learned things about her too. She liked spreadsheets because numbers didn't need to be managed emotionally. She color-coded her calendar with a precision that bordered on alarming. She didn't take calls before 9, unless something was actually on fire, and even then, she said, she'd prefer a text. One gray Thursday, I admitted, out of nowhere, that work had started to feel strange to me. Strange how? She asked. Like I'm good at it, and that might be the problem. I know exactly what to say. In every meeting. I know what people want to hear. I just don't know if I mean any of it anymore. She stirred her cortado, which didn't need stirring. The answer's probably already in you. You just don't like it yet. That's an annoying thing to say. I know. It's also probably true, and you're annoyed because you know it too. That should have bothered me more than it did. By the following Friday, our mornings had stopped feeling like coincidence, and started feeling like a plan neither of us had officially agreed to. That day she came in later than usual, hair damp from the rain, mouth set in the kind of tight, controlled irritation that meant something specific was bothering her. Bad morning? I asked. There's an industry mixer tonight. Investors, founders, people who use the word synergy, unironically. Sounds harmless. It's not. I don't know. What made me say it? I could come with you. She looked up, actually surprised for the first time since I'd met her. Why would you do that? Because I know how to survive in rooms full of people pretending to enjoy themselves. It's basically my job. That's your pitch? It's honest. You realize it's not your industry. I build brands. Everyone in that room is trying to be one. She studied me for a long moment, the kind of look that felt like being appraised. Wear something dark, she said finally. And don't embarrass me. That night, I met her outside a hotel on Front Street, downtown, near the convention center. She was in a black dress under a long coat, sharp and simple, and for one full second, I forgot how to say hello like a normal person. Don't get weird, she said, clocking it immediately. I was already a little weird before you got here. Then keep it contained. Inside, the room was all glass and low light, and the specific noise of people laughing half a beat too hard at things that weren't that funny. Naomi moved through it like she already knew where every exit was. Which, knowing her, she probably did. I gave her space at first. But somehow we kept ending up near each other again. A man cornered her by the bar and talked at length about market disruption. Until I stepped in with a question pointed enough to redirect him toward me, and she slipped away without seeming to hurry. 10 minutes later she reappeared at my elbow while I was trapped, with a woman explaining, with real passion, her startup for luxury pet transportation. She needs you, Naomi said, nodding vaguely at nothing, and I excused myself so fast. The pet transportation woman probably still thinks about it. You saved me, I told her. She was 2 sentences from describing a private jet for dogs. You owe me. I do. Later we ended up in a quieter corner near a fig tree that looked too healthy to be real. The room kept moving around us, but between the two of us everything had gone still. You're better at this than you let on, she said. I never said I was bad at it. I said I didn't want to come. That's different. Very. I said her name, then, just her name, and whatever clever thing I'd been building toward disappeared entirely. Her expression changed. Not much, just enough that I noticed. We should go, she said. The cab ride to her building near the distillery district was quiet but not uncomfortable. Our knees touched once, when the car turned onto Front Street, and neither of us moved away. Outside her building, The rain had left the sidewalk shining under the streetlights. She stood by the door with her keys already in her hand. "Do you want to come up?" she asked. No test in it this time. Just the question. "Yes," I said, and she held my eyes for one more second before she unlocked the door. The next morning should have felt strange. Waking up in an unfamiliar apartment, with gray November light through the blinds, and my shirt folded neatly over a chair. Folded, not draped, which told me something about her. I hadn't quite clocked yet. I expected careful smiles, some mutual pretending to be more relaxed than we were. Instead, she was already in the kitchen, barefoot, wearing a plain white shirt that somehow still looked deliberate. "Coffee?" she asked, like I'd slept there 100 times before. "You make it sound very official. It's coffee. It should be treated with respect." She poured mine black without asking, and that small detail landed harder than it should have. We sat at her kitchen table and talked about ordinary things. The man and his market disruption speech, the dog jet founder, the fact that Toronto weather in November is basically a personal attack. She laughed once, a real laugh, and looked briefly startled by her own sound. When I got up to leave, she walked me to the door. I was already composing some careful, unbothered sentence when she said, "Same birch and ember. Unless you've found better coffee, I haven't." Then same time. So I believed her. Monday morning I got there at 7:45. Her table was empty. Myself, she was running late. I told myself. I ordered, sat down, answered 2 emails, kept glancing at the door every time the chime rang. She never came. Tuesday, the same. By Wednesday I nearly gave up and went back to Fernbrook, just to prove something to myself. But I still ended up at Birch and Ember anyway, standing in line like a man who'd lost an argument nobody else even knew was happening. Her chair stayed empty. By then I'd started replaying everything. The cab, her door, her kitchen, same time tomorrow. Wondering if I'd misread the whole thing, or if she'd meant it in the moment and something had changed her mind afterward. With Naomi, both felt possible. Thursday afternoon, my phone buzzed. No greeting, no explanation. Just an address on Ossington and a time, 7:30. I stared at it, longer than I should have. Then typed back. Okay. The restaurant was the quiet, expensive kind where nothing on the walls tried too hard to impress you. Naomi was already at a corner table, a glass of water in front of her, hair tucked behind one ear, composed but not comfortable. "Hi," she said. "Hi." I sat down. For the first time since I'd met her, the silence between us didn't feel easy. She looked at the menu, then closed it without reading it. I handled this badly. That surprised me. I'd braced for a clean, controlled explanation, not that. "You disappeared," I said. "After telling me same time tomorrow." "I know." The server came, we ordered food neither of us seemed to actually want, and when he left, Naomi put both hands flat on the table like she was steadying herself. "I'm used to controlling my life," she said. "My work, my schedule, the people I let get close. Everything has a place I put it in. And I didn't have one." "No," she said, looking at me directly. "You didn't." I wanted to stay annoyed. I'd earned it. But there was something in her face I hadn't seen before. Not fear exactly, more like someone standing close to the edge of a step they couldn't see the bottom of. "My father ran a business when I was a kid," she said. "He trusted people too easily. Signed things he didn't read carefully enough. Believed a handshake meant more than it did. We lost almost everything. And I watched what that did to him." She said it plainly, but her fingers had tightened against the table. "So you decided never to be careless," I said. "I decided carelessness was a luxury I couldn't afford." That sat between us for a moment. I told her things too, more than I'd planned to. About work feeling hollow. About being praised for ideas I didn't believe in anymore. About how easy it was to keep performing competence, without ever asking whether you still wanted the life attached to it. She listened without interrupting, and at one point reached across the table and put her hand over mine just briefly, then pulled it back like even that had startled her. Then, By the time we were outside, the night felt almost repaired. Almost. We stood near the curb, restaurant light behind us, the wet street reflecting the traffic sliding past. I was about to ask where we went, sure, when she looked at me and said, "Before you say anything else, I need to tell you something." My stomach tightened before I understood why. "What?" I said. She took a slow breath. "The first morning at Birch and Ember wasn't an accident." I stared at her. She didn't look away. Of course she didn't. "What does that mean?" I said. "Your firm came up as a possible partner on a project I was building. A rebrand for a client who needed outside creative direction. I looked into the agency. Your name kept coming up. Interviews, a couple of panels you'd spoken on, enough public material to get a sense of you before we ever met. My routine. My Fernbrook's compressor issue was posted on their Instagram that morning. I guessed you'd need somewhere else to go. Birch and Ember was the closest decent option, so I went early and waited. The street noise seemed to drop away." "You positioned yourself there," I said. "Yes. The timing, the line, all of it. The coffee," I said quietly. "Was that part of it too?" "No. I didn't plan that part, that was you." I laughed once, but there wasn't any humor in it. "That's what you're clarifying, that one detail?" Her face tightened. "I'm not defending any of it. I'm telling you the truth. Finally, because you deserve it more than I deserve to keep hiding it." Everything rearranged itself in my head at once. Her watching me before I ever saw her, the way she hadn't seemed surprised when I came back for my bag, the way she'd already known my Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday pattern, before I'd told her a single thing about myself. What had felt electric now had wiring behind it I hadn't seen. "The first meeting was strategic," she said, her voice softer now. "I thought I was creating an opening for a business conversation. Then you weren't what I expected, and I didn't know how to walk it back without losing something I hadn't planned on wanting. That's supposed to make it better?" "No, it's just true." I looked down the street because looking at her had become too much. She kept going anyway. "I didn't expect to want the mornings. I didn't expect to close my laptop every time you sat down. I didn't expect the whole industry mixer to feel easier just because you were in the room. I didn't expect you." I wanted to say something sharp, something clean enough to let me walk away untouched. Instead, I just felt tired. "I need a few days," I said. She nodded once. No argument. No attempt to pull me back. "You should have them." A cab pulled up and I got in before I could talk myself out of it. Through the back window I could see her still standing on the curb, straight-backed and still under the restaurant light. And as the car pulled away, I honestly couldn't tell which part hurt more. That she'd engineered the beginning, or that everything after it had still felt completely real. For 2 days I did all the ordinary things people do when their head isn't actually in the room. I went to work. I sat through a meeting where my boss asked what I thought of a launch strategy, and I gave an answer, competent enough that nobody clocked. I was somewhere else entirely. I bought a sandwich at lunch and ate half of it without tasting anything. The whole time, I kept going back to that first morning in my mind. Not the version I wanted, the real one. She'd known I might walk in. She'd chosen that table. She'd let me believe the first look between us was chance when it wasn't. That mattered, and I didn't want to brush past it, just because a woman with sharp eyes and a color-coded calendar had made me feel more seen than I had in years. But then, the rest of it kept coming back too. The mornings after that first one, the laptop closing the second I sat down. The dry little comments she'd saved just for me. The way she'd actually listened when I talked about work, not collecting information, but caring where the truth in it was hiding. The event. How she kept finding her way back to me in that room. Her laugh in the kitchen startled by itself. Standing outside the restaurant telling me the truth. When she absolutely could have kept it buried, she could have said nothing. I never would have known. I would have kept believing the story was cleaner than it actually was. Instead, she told me at the exact moment it might cost her everything, and that part wouldn't leave me alone. Saturday afternoon, I called her. She picked up on the second ring. "Hi," she said. "Careful, not cold. Careful." "Meet me at Birch and Ember," I said. "An hour." A small pause. "Okay." When I got there, she was already at our table. No laptop this time, no phone in her hand, just a cortado in front of her and an expression I'd never seen on her before. Something closer to unprepared than I thought she was capable of. I ordered my coffee and walked over. She didn't speak when I sat down. "For once," I said, "you built the first moment on purpose, and you never told me." Her eyes stayed on mine. "You knew where to stand. You knew I'd probably come in. You let me believe it was chance, and when I came back on my own, you let that mystery feel real too." "Yes. That part hurt. I know. I need you to actually hear that." It made me question everything that came after it. Her hands stayed folded near her cup, but her fingers moved once, like she wanted to reach across the table and stopped herself. "I should have told you sooner. I was afraid." That wasn't a word I expected from Naomi Calder. Not because I thought she never felt it, but because I'd have guessed she'd walk through a snowstorm without a coat before she'd admit to it out loud. "Afraid of what?" I asked. "Of ruining the one thing in my life that had stopped feeling managed." That got me. I sat back and let the ordinary noise of the café fill the space for a second. The hiss of the steam wand. Someone laughing near the door. The world outside the window moving on, without knowing that for me the entire thing had narrowed down to this one small table. "If we're doing this," I said, "honesty has to matter more than control. You don't get to decide what I know because it makes the plan easier for you. It won't happen again. I'm not saying I'm fine with what happened. I wouldn't believe you if you said you were." That almost made me smile. Almost. She reached into her coat pocket and slid a small folded piece of paper across the table. "What's this?" I asked. "Something I wrote before you got here." I unfolded it. 4 words, written in small, careful handwriting. Nothing planned this time. I read it twice, folded it back up, and put it in my jacket pocket. "We start from here," I said. "No strategy, no angles, no plans I don't know about." She nodded, and for the first time since I'd known her, her smile came all the way out. Not measured, not held back, just there. Changing her whole face. We sat together at the same table, where the whole thing had technically begun as something staged. The same window, the same 2 cups, the same chairs. Only this time I knew exactly why I was there, and so did she, and neither of us needed to pretend otherwise.